Hello and welcome to this another Time for Advice video. We're often asked by prospective clients just what the journey's like to transition from the legacy systems they're currently using to a more modern CRM-based solution. And frankly, there's no more compelling answer we can give than to invite our existing clients to give comment. And so to that end, I'm delighted to welcome today Jon Macintosh, who is the managing partner of Saltus. He's going to tell us a little bit about his business and about his journey and where he is today. So, Jon.
Hi, Roland.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Thank you for turning up on this particularly wet day here in not so sunny Oxfordshire. You well?
I'm very well, thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you. Now, obviously, Jon, we've known each other for a few years now. And we met a number of years ago when I think you were just beginning to develop your financial planning arm. But what would be really useful for us and our viewers is for you to tell us a little bit about Saltus, what you do, and your journey so far in terms of your direction of travel. So tell us about that.
Sure. So we are 16 years old. We got our license in almost exactly 16 years ago to set up as a private client fund manager. And originally we were a couple of guys who were spinning out of the institutional world to try to bring a different way of managing money to the private clients in the UK. And so we kind of did that for a while, and we ended up working with a number of IFA firms where we were providing investment management services to them. And we actually found it an unsatisfactory experience because of regulatory changes. A lot of them were either churning their investments with us or selling out to consolidators, and so even though we were doing a good job, we were losing. Our clients were turning over faster than we felt was what we wanted. So we thought, if you can't beat them, join them. And so we hired a financial planner and kind of learnt the hard way about how do you run a financial planning business, and it's not easy. And so you need to understand power planning and client administration and getting feeds from the various life insurance companies where you've got client policies. And so we've spent something like the last 7 or 8 years kind of learning the hard way. And the big step for us actually was accidentally we inherited CURO. Because we bought a business in 2016 who were an early adopter of CURO. And whilst in many ways that they were a very disorganized and slightly backward-looking business, the one thing which they'd done really right was stumble across CURO. And even though they weren't really using it to its full effect, I think it was the beginning of our kind of journey towards becoming a next generation wealth manager.
Which is fascinating, isn't it? Because we're seeing quite a lot of convergence at the moment between, previously quite separate and discrete businesses, the wealth manager and the financial planner. Certainly the larger wealth managers, they might have had a financial planning organisation, but it wasn't really front of house. But that seems to have switched, and we're also seeing now, other wealth management businesses either merging with or buying or developing their own financial planning services. Why do you think that change is happening?
Oh, there's so many moving parts to the UK retail financial services industry has always been, to an outsider, confusing and perplexing. And why is it like this? Why are insurance companies the dominant force in UK retail investment services? And there are good reasons, but there are reasons of history, and all of that is now being untangled, and we're converging on a kind of a modern model for wealth management, which is not hidebound by historical accident. And so, and it's an exciting time to be in this industry because it's changing as we speak, and you're seeing on the one hand the kind of self-service platforms like Hargreaves Lansdown or Interactive Investor, which serve a fantastically useful purpose for those who want to go it alone. And then you're also seeing the old-fashioned private client stockbrokers having to modernise and become discretionary and take on board financial planning. And then for new entrants like us, it's great because a lot of these guys are kind of stuck. And so we can kind of reinvent what we think next generation good looks like and kind of do it with a blank canvas.
Which is really liberating in a way, isn't it? Hard in one way because you've got to think through, what the proposition is and how you're best going to deliver against that, but also liberating because you're unencumbered by the legacy. which is really exciting. And obviously, we're talking a lot, we hear a lot about the importance of technology, the new digital services that are beginning to arrive. Clearly, COVID has had a massive accelerant effect, hasn't it, on the industry, in terms of how people engage with each other nowadays. Digital has gone from nothing really to quite, universal acceptance by necessity. What do you think the role of technology is for financial advisors? I mean, you've obviously been through a number of acquisitions. You've seen the legacy technologies of old in common use. What do you think needs to happen in order to modernise financial planners and get them to a stage where they're able to deliver service the way their clients are perhaps expecting to be serviced in future?
Ooh, it's another hard question, Roland. But I think a lot of this is a kind of virtuous circle. That at the moment, if you ask a client what they want from technology, or even a financial planner, they would kind of look at you blankly and go, well, it's kind of what I've got. But the more that one can offer people, the more that they go, oh yeah, that's great. Like DocuSign or Zoom, that now people take it for granted, whereas a year ago, most people had never used it. And I think we are so early on that journey. And so it's about who's got the vision and who can build the technology in a way that it's very easy to use for the end customer, but also for the advisor. I think that people are quite focused on the client-facing kind of fintech solution. But for me, that's kind of missing the point, because I think giving the tools to the advisor to do a great job, that will help him survive or her survive and be able to maintain margins and be more efficient, and without necessarily forcing reluctant clients to use technology instead of having that human touch.
I think what's interesting as well is the way attitudes have changed with financial planning businesses who prior to the pandemic, of course, wouldn't countenance in any form of digital. It was always face-to-face. But do you think, in your experience, how do you think clients have changed, adapted to the current environment? And what's their appetite for face-to-face over digital? What do your clients value about the service that you provide?
I think that's two different questions there. Is what do our clients value in terms of what we provide, versus the other question being, the face-to-face versus digital. And to answer the first one first, the face-to-face versus digital, my personal belief is that clients should have a choice, and that the journey which a client goes on with a wealth manager, from onboarding to the creation of the financial plan, to the implementation, to valuation reporting, to taking money out, putting money in, annual review, all of that stuff. There's a motorway, which is the kind of the client journey with you, from when you first meet them to when they sack you or die or pass their money on to their children, and at each step you should give them the choice. Which bit do you want to do yourself digitally versus which bit do you want a helpful Saltus human to do for you? And our job should not be to tell them which one they should have, but it should be to offer them the choice.
And I think that's spot on, isn't it? Is that something, in your experience, professional advice businesses get? Do they challenge their service proposition, the way they deliver value, or do they just do what they've always done and expect clients to continue? I don't know, what's your view on that?
I think our industry is in the stone age when it comes to technology. Yeah. I think it's really striking how technology doesn't really exist in an easy to access fashion to solve these problems.
So that brings me on to my next thing, because you said you came across us by accident really when you acquired one of our first users and one of our early adopters. Actually, they were previous clients of Key Software, my previous business, so nice firm. But then you went on to buy another larger firm who were using Advisor Office, I think, at that stage. So obviously you were early days with CCD even then, with CURO even then. Given that you were buying into a larger firm with a more established system, Advisor Office, which was an industry standard back in the mid-90s, why did you enter the project of transferring, if you like, away from Advisor Office into CURO? What was the sort of catalyst to take that step? And what was the process like? What was the journey like? Because again, you were quite early days with Time4Advice and CURO, but what were the primary challenges you found and how did you overcome them?
Before we bought Andrews Hammond Brady, where we inherited our CURO license, that we actually already had Advisor Office, because when we had hired our first financial planner, when we strayed into the industry, he came along with all his clients on Advisor Office, and so we had a license then, and so I think we'd already formed a preliminary view as to, Advisor Office is it's like a very kind of well-trodden system, but my analogy is it's like when you live in a house for a long time and you redecorate and you put wallpaper on top of wallpaper and then paint and then wallpaper and then wallpaper, and it kind of looks nice on the outside, but when you start scratching, it's like it's so you need to really go back to the brickwork and start again if you want a perfect finish, and that's one of the things I love about CURO, is that it has been designed by advisors who've been around the loop once. Yeah. And so and for us, the data structure and the kind of the well thought out nature of that data structure just sets it apart from all the other systems out there.
Oh, that's great. And that's good to hear.
I'm not being paid, by the way.
That's what he says. But thank you for that, John, and it's appreciated, because I know, throughout our journey together, you've been pretty consistent about that in terms of the data structure, because I think it was you that said our real focus is all about the data, because if we get the data right, then everything else will work. And that's, I think, absolutely right. You're not compromised, are you? Because once you have the data held in a structured way, you can surface it in a way that's usable. So what do you think, or how do you think CURO has improved your back office, your business? How has it added value to Saltus?
To give a slightly long-winded answer, if I may, when we were an investment management business only, we ran 1,000 accounts, and we in terms of our portfolio management software, we had not been able to find anything off the shelf that worked. We'd been through 2 systems which didn't work, and we junked them, and we'd end up having to hire a developer and build our own. And we'd got to the point where we were running 1,000 accounts which we were managing actively, and we had one person operations team, and that system was very well thought through and it exactly catered to our needs, and so therefore it could be very efficient the way we processed payments, did valuations, rebalanced portfolios, etc. And then we got into financial planning, and suddenly our operations team went from 1 person to 30. And a lot of that was to do with coping with much more complicated data and much more varied types of transactions. And actually CURO has been our saviour in that sense, in that having a really, really well-designed data model, and then being able, and that has then forced us to really think carefully through our processes, whether it's onboarding or the advice process or the annual review process. What data do we need to capture, in what format, what data do we need to present, and what transformations are there along the way, and that we can then build the process and have everyone follow them in order to have a consistent and repeatable outcome. And then you can then start to automate those processes. But having a good data model is critical, because without that you're dead in the water. And then that's forced us to think carefully about our process and then have super clean data. So it's actually been like the kind of the cart leading the horse in some ways.
Just to finish off now, and thank you for your insights there. What advice would you give to other firms who are currently sitting on one of the legacy back office systems? What would your advice be to them when they're considering moving back office systems, perhaps to CURO?
I think it would be like if I was advising a friend who was married to the wrong person. I'd say that, if you know that you are in a marriage which is not doing it for you, and you've tried your hardest to make it work, and then you want to think very carefully about your next marriage. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it means you want to think carefully about it, and you because we marry in haste and we repent at leisure, And so that would be the first piece of advice, is make sure that you really understand what you want from your system, because it is like a marriage. Once you're in there, you don't want to be changing it again. But I think the second piece of advice along the same theme is that you have to invest in your marriage. You can't just kind of buy a system and go, oh, it doesn't quite do what I want. You have to think carefully about how you want it to be, and then really invest some energy in getting it there. And I think obviously it depends on your resource, whether you're a smaller business where you want something more out of the box, or whether you're a bigger business which is more set in its ways, when you can tailor and you've got the budget to invest in making the system exactly as you want.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? The time is going to go anyway. And I suppose one of the main questions, certainly, that I'd be encouraging prospective clients to think about is, put yourself 5 years down the line, you take no action, what's changed? Are you still going to be in the same place except you're 5 years later? Or are you going to make that commitment to move forward, understanding that the solution might not be perfect to begin with, but with consideration and thought, with effort and, you're right, investment in that journey, then in 5 years' time, you'll be in a completely different space, and also benefiting from the ongoing investment. Because don't forget, we're sitting on a platform called Microsoft Dynamics. Microsoft invest continually in their R&D to evolve their solutions for the benefit of their global clients. And all we've done is we've taken that incredible platform and made it relevant to a particular market, which of course increasingly is going to need to take advantage of the modern technologies that are coming down the line, those technologies which will digitally transform your business.
Yeah, I think for us the biggest investment has really been about in thinking and time rather than actually spending money. And I think that the tools that are available out of the box in CURO now drastically shorten the journey of customizing it in a way that you want. And Microsoft has obviously got an exciting load of stuff coming down the pipe in the next 12 months or so.
So true. John, thank you very much indeed. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. I thought that was illuminating, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us. Thank you.
Good to see you, Roland.
And you.